Lifestyle, the podcast. I'm the host, the Honey Badger, here to give it to you straight and transparent about the RV business, as well as other things. Today, we're going to do another what if. What if the actual RV market crashes where you can buy a new $200,000 motorhome for 20 grand type of thing? What if it got that bad where you could go out and buy things for 10 cents on the dollar? What would that world look like? And how would it affect the entire industry, the community, and the country? Because it would affect more than just the RV industry. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Good morning, Mike Adams. Before I do that, I just want to say, I was sitting here with my blankets because it's like 39 degrees outside, and I was watching the new Superman trailer. If you haven't seen it, you should go look at it after this episode. I was pleasantly surprised. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I would be really shocked if none of you liked it or none of you anticipated seeing the movie. That's the first movie beyond Sonic the Hedgehog 3 that I'm actually excited to go see in the movie theater since Deadpool and Wolverine. So I watched Deadpool and Wolverine this year and Alien Romulus. Those are the only two movies I watched in the theater this year because everything else looked like it was a waste of my money. I've seen Wicked in Broadway, so why would I watch Wicked in the movie theater? That's how I feel about it, right? Anyway, so let's get into this. So what started this path is there's a lot of people that are making comments on TikTok, YouTube. Oh, you know, the prices of everything are still too high. Okay. So let's go into a world. Let's say that Jerome Powell, instead of lowering interest rates, which he lowered yesterday. Good morning, Paula. Let's say instead of lowering interest rates, he raises interest rates next year. Okay? And let's say that Camping World, because we're going to pick on Camping World because they're the biggest. Camping World tomorrow says that every single Cougar travel trailer, Cougar fifth wheel, is going to be 90% off MSRP. What would that world look like? So the first thing that would happen is you'd have mass hysteria where people would be running to the dealership lot because they could buy a $100,000 fifth wheel for 10 grand, brand new, 2024, 2025. They would be running down to go buy a Grand Design Solitude for $15,000, $20,000 brand new. It would be mass hysteria. You would see every single dealership would be out of inventory within 5 days. And then what it would do is the down snowball effect of that is everybody that bought a fifth wheel, a motorhome, a travel trailer in the last 10 years, not the last 4 years, the last 10 years, would instantaneously look at that, turn around, and voluntarily repossess their current unit to go buy a unit for 10 grand or 15 grand. It would be the largest mass voluntary repossession in the history of the United States of America. The banks would end up closing their doors and halting all lending because they would have so much money tied up in units that were purchased in 2013 or 2014. We're not even talking about COVID units. We're talking about units that were purchased 10, 11, 12 years ago. So if you bought a Tiffin Allegro bus and you paid $400,000 back in 2014, that's probably the top of the market type of deal. And now you could go buy a brand new one in 2024 for $100,000. You're going to give back the old one to the bank and go buy the new one. And if you own it, this is where paying cash sucks. Okay? It's the only reason why it sucks. Is let's say you paid cash for the unit. Now you are at a 99% depreciation if you paid cash and you own it in a title. So you bought a travel trailer in cash in 2018 for, let's say, $30,000. Now you go buy that same unit today for $10,000 brand new. Your coach is worth less than 50 cents. So that travel trailer you bought 6 years ago in cash has 99% depreciation. Then it would be a snowball effect, because now the lenders would stop lending. They would halt lending right away on everything. They would halt mortgages. They would halt cars. They would halt day-to-day funding operations for dealerships for businesses like Walmart, Target, grocery stores. It would be such an infrastructural mess because the banks would be out of money. Or in this case, since money's kind of a fugazi, it's debt, they would be running out of credit to lend out to people, because they would have to spend time figuring out how to recover from the mass voluntary repossession. There's already, hello Alabama, there's already, watch this, there's already a large amount of voluntary repossessions of COVID units because prices dropped and leveled off. I didn't say back, a year ago, I said the industry isn't going to crash, it's going to correct itself. We already went through the correction. It's done. Used might take a little more of a hit this year because it hasn't fully corrected itself. Like, for example, the dealership I'm working with doing videos and things like that, they already adjusted their used pricing down. So in fact, they have 4 motorhomes that are used that they asked me my opinion of, and they dropped it down to wholesale book, basically what they paid for it. So the reality is that you're never going to get an RV, a car, a boat, a power sports thing for 10 cents on the dollar. It will never, ever happen. It would destroy so many industries. That snowball effect would be so hurtful to the entire economic infrastructure. And by the way, it would be the same thing if the auto industry did it. If tomorrow Ram trucks were 90% off MSRP, it would be the same thing. The Ram truck repossession rate, voluntary, would skyrocket. And because there's more Ram trucks on the road than there are RVs, it would be even harsher and even more difficult. So a lot of you don't understand that the way it corrects itself is manufacturing slows down. Look at Polaris. Arctic Cat's a good example. Forest River. I just got off the phone yesterday with somebody at Thor Industries. I just got off the phone with somebody at Northwood Manufacturing. They all have compressed their manufacturing down to basically 3 days a week. They're building at 60% capacity. 60% of a normal market, not of a good market, 60% capacity of that normal RV market. They're taking away the supply because the demand is lowered. So you're also going to see over the next 3 to 4 months, unless something turns around, Oregon is going to lose all its manufacturing in RVs. It's all going to get moved back to Indiana, so that way the RV industry can get their quality back to somewhat of normal, because it hasn't been normal the last 2 months. Now, normal to me is a lot different than normal to you, because I've been in the industry a long time. And anybody who tells you that, well, 10 years ago they were built better, any person that does that's trying to sell you something. They're trying to sell you their inspection services or whatever the case may be. Okay. The last 2 months, I've had service guys tell me that the stuff coming out of the factory is below normal. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're building at 60% capacity rather than 80 or 90. So closing down the Oregon plants and moving manufacturing completely back to Indiana would actually solve that. Because now you can get people back to work 4 to 5 days a week and run 80%, which will actually increase the quality. None of them are ever going to be perfect, guys. No matter what you do. Cars aren't perfect. Trucks aren't perfect. Boats aren't perfect. What makes people think RVs are ever going to be perfect? Okay. So let's go down another rabbit hole. At that point, if Marcus Lemonis pulled that lever and said, I'm willing to lose $3 or $4 or $500 million selling new inventory in 2025, if Blue Compass decided to do the same thing, if every dealer decided to take a 99.4% total loss, they'd be out of business in less than 60 days. Because let's remember, banks fund and lend a large company's day-to-day operations. Without the bank giving them the lending power to fund themselves on a daily basis while they wait for accounts receivable to collect money, that's how businesses work. They run on debt, especially large corporations. They run on debt daily. So if Mr. Lemonis pulls that trigger, if Blue Compass pulls that trigger, if General RV, Bish's RV, if all these companies pull that trigger, they put themselves out of business. They put manufacturing out of business. They take everybody that's ever bought an RV in the last 10 years, goes straight to the auction. Banks start shutting down. You want global meltdown of an economy? That's how it happens. So all of you that bitch and complain that prices are going to crash and you're going to wait till they crash, you're basically asking for everybody to be in a soup line. You're asking for another Great Depression. That's what you're asking for. You're pretty much asking for your neighbor to possibly starve. That's what you're asking for. So your choice not to RV, because for the last 10 years, prices have been too high and they're going to crash. Think about what you're asking. You're asking for a global economic meltdown of the US dollar, the likes that no one's ever seen. And that's the same thing with trucks. That's the same thing with boats. Hell, it's the same thing with televisions, Xboxes, computers, cell phones. You would see if an iPhone went from being $1,000 cell phone to $100 tomorrow for a brand new iPhone 16, how many people would stop paying their Verizon bill? How many people would stop paying their AT&T bill? They would go straight to Apple, go get the $100 phone. Then they would go down to T-Mobile or whoever and activate the device on a cheap plan and let their Verizon and their AT&T bill go into collection. Because why are you going to pay a monthly payment on $1,000 or $2,000 phone when you can buy a brand new iPhone 16 for $100? People are not stupid. People are intelligent for the most part. People have common sense. So the problem is sitting on the sidelines and complaining isn't going to get you out there building memories. There's a 60-day window starting December 26th. In 60 days after December 26th, right as we cross over into March, dealership prices and profits will go up, not down. The supply is evening out on new. And I'm going to go one step further, okay, in just a second, because you're going to go, well, you know, look at all the repossessions happening. I'm going to get into that in just a minute. But just imagine that on February 15th, you find the right unit, but you sit there and think, oh yeah, prices are going to crash. And then in March, hey, it went up $1,500. Then in April, hey, it went up another $1,000. Then in May, it went up $500, but it's going to crash. It's going to crash. I'm telling you, it's going to crash. And then by the time 2027 comes around, yeah, I was thinking about RVing one day, but you know, I just missed my window because it became unaffordable. So that's the bottom line about that. Now, voluntary repossessions. I mentioned this last week. I'm going to go one step further than I did last week. So I have a contact at two of the major banks in the United States. We're not talking about small regional banks. We're talking about national banks. I have two contacts there. I'm not going to tell you where, who, or anything of that nature. That's not fair to them because they're feeding me information and I don't want to get cut off of that information. The major banks are in contact with FEMA. They're also in contact with emergency deployment services in California, Florida, all along the east and west coast into Texas and the southern states that border the Gulf. They are planning on selling the majority of the repossession, especially the COVID units. They're planning on selling those to the government. Because if they run them through the auction, these are the conversations they're having. If they run a 2020 Thor Miramar through the auction, and let's say they lent $125,000 on that motorhome, and I'm selling one on the lot that's a 2018 for $59,000, what's the dealer going to pay? While the government will pay retail book with no ads. So on average, the bank can recover 35% more selling it directly to the government rather than running it through the auction and to paying auction fees and paying all these garbage things and then not knowing if it's even going to sell. Because they're running into the same thing with cars. They've seen a lot of problems getting cars sold at the auction for a proper amount of money to recover a lot of what they've lost. Now, it's their own damn fault. I'm not saying it's not their fault. I'm just saying that's the reality. So your major banks, your Bank of Americas, your BMOs, your U.S. banks, your big credit unions across the country, your Huntington National banks, all these prime lenders, the M&T banks, all these prime lenders that are taking all these voluntary repossessions that they overlended on, they're not going to sell them back to dealers for pennies on the dollar. They have to recover or make an attempt to recover the most amount of money out of those repossessions, and it's easier, cleaner, and gets you more money by selling them to FEMA. So what is the government going to do? Well, the government has a bunch of travel trailers and a bunch of RVs that are 12, 15 years old that they got to get rid of. So that's where the deals are going to come in. Those are the trailers that and the motorhomes and the RVs that are going to be good deals. They're probably going to be trashed because they've been used for hurricane relief and fire zones and things of that nature. But that's where you're going to get pennies on the dollar for stuff, is the stuff from FEMA, the stuff from emergency services, local, county, and state, depending on where you live. Because there's going to be an abundance of newer stuff that the government's going to buy straight from the banks. You see, the banks even know that they can't let it crash. Because if they let it get any worse, it's just going to be this snowball effect. Then you got to look at the inventory loans, what we call floor plan. That, what did they say the other day? 88%, somewhere around there, of these RVs that are sitting on dealership lots have inventory loans on them or are floor planned. Common sense, guys. No matter, this is the part of the economy that's going to get bad. The part of the economy that's going to get bad and get really bad is commercial real estate. We've now had 7 guys that are in commercial real estate make this announcement. We've seen Warren Buffett sell off his Bank of America stock. If you're looking to buy something pennies on the dollar, commercial real estate is a great place to start in the next 6 months. If you want to buy stock into collection agencies that are going to help collect on credit card debt, that's probably a safe bet. But if you're sitting on the sidelines because some idiot on YouTube decide to say that everything in their mama is going to crash in pricing. Really? What does that person know? Well, supply and demand. That's all everybody says. Okay, let's look at supply and demand. In the RV industry, right now, back in August of 2022, there were 5 RVs for every 1 family in the market. That is why the market corrected itself. That's why it's been on that slow downward trend up until about September of this year. And then it leveled off. So for 2 years, it was just a straight downhill. And then right around September, October of this year, it leveled off. Why? Because right now, you're at about 2.25 to 2.5 RVs for every 1 family in the market. So the inventory got cut down in half and the demand stayed the same. It hasn't increased, it hasn't decreased, it stayed the same. So that's why I try to always, like, there was a guy that came on the lot that I ended up talking to in an overflow type of moment. And he's a cool guy, just got out of the hospital, has some really good plans. And he's like, well, these things are just not flying off the shelf. And I go, well, this dealership I'm sitting at doing filming for sold 22 travel trailers in November. And they're a small little lot. So obviously the demand is still there and people are still buying. They're being more selective about what they buy. You no longer need a big staff at a small dealer to take care of the customer. They're not going to go through the roof, but they're going to stay right where they're at. You got a 60-day window right now where dealers are dumping inventory across the United States. And they're doing an inventory dump like they should be doing every year. Now, it's all stuff that didn't sell earlier in the year during the peak of season, spring and summer. So you're kind of getting the leftovers. But there's still some good deals to be bought out there. If you're in the market, you're ready, willing, and able, you should be buying here in late December, all January, through the end of February. Now, if you're not ready, wait. You're going to pay a little bit more money. If you just can't see yourself paying 8% or 9% interest, okay, no big deal. When rates go down, you will pay a higher price. Not a big deal. You're either an interest rate buyer or you're a price buyer. You're not both. You can tell everybody you're both, but that's not realistic. Yeah, there you go, Mike. You're funny. So this is where, like housing will correct itself. It's not going to crash like 08 or 09 because the housing crisis is different than it was 08 or 09. The housing crisis was caused by hedge fund companies buying up houses for Airbnb, Vrbo, rentals, because that was the trendy thing that was occurring during COVID. Okay. Now you have a lot of counties, a lot of states, a lot of cities that have either adapted a law that forbids short-term rentals on single-family homes. So basically, Vrbo and Airbnb are illegal in a lot of cities and counties right now. And you have states that are considering doing the same thing. So the hedge fund companies are going to start dumping inventory onto the market, which is going to put pressure on prices. So high interest rates, lots of inventory, that's when prices come down. Are you going to buy a house for 10 cents on the dollar? No. Are you going to buy it for 80 cents on the dollar? Possibly. 85 cents on the dollar, even big possibility. Are you ever going to get the deals that happened during the Great Recession in 08, 9, and 10? No. You lost your opportunity right then and there. But just to let you know, I knew good people that bought homes in 08, 9, and 10 that they don't wish that to ever happen again. They thought it was such a great thing because they could buy a 5-bedroom, 4-bath house in the middle of an amazing neighborhood for $85,000. And then they walked into the home and there's graffiti all over the place, broken glass, nothing works, electrical's all screwed up, plumbing's all screwed up. The wall, it needed more renovation than what they paid for the house. So, realtors are hoping for a correction because a correction they can make money on. If it crashes, it won't. But if it crashes, if the entire housing market melts down, it means unemployment's over 15%, at least what the government will admit. It means credit is frozen up. It means people are living out of their cars worse than I am right now. Guys, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen the way you want it to happen. Housing market in a way crashed because of lending, because of adjustable rate mortgages, because of go watch the movie The Big Short. That's probably the best movie that explains it. It doesn't go 100% into it, but that's the majority of what happened. Credit was freezing up. Lenders weren't giving out loans in 06, 07 like they were. You had a bunch of companies that were leveraged beyond anything that's possible. And you started seeing Lehman's collapse. You started seeing a bunch of these institutions collapse. People lost their jobs. Unemployment got north of 15%. People couldn't afford to pay their mortgages. The adjustable rates kicked in. People that were on a teaser rate had their payments go through the roof and had to get back their houses. I am in the industry now. I'm back. I'm just back in a different capacity. I always listen to guys pulled over on the side of the road on YouTube Live. That's cool, knocked out. I don't have anywhere else to film. I started to do that and it became tough. It became difficult. It really did. I tried to start an Uber channel and it became very difficult to do. I'm going to try again, but I decided that for the next 6 months, I was going to focus on the podcast and the main channel. I want to get this podcast to 10,000 subscribers by summer. And I want to get the main channel to 25,000 subscribers by summer. That's my goal. And then I'll go from there. That's really what my goal is. I already tried. That's what's funny, person with a brain. I already tried. I got to 426 subscribers, but then it's like, it just started becoming more of a headache to try to do. So, but yeah, I'm back in the industry, just in a different capacity than I used to be. I will make the announcement of where I'm going to permanently land, probably in the next 90 days. I'm probably going to wait till, I know that I will be at the Pleasanton show in California because it's Northern California is a lot easier to get to than Tampa Bay, Florida right now. It's just too much money for me to go Tampa Bay. I don't have the money. I want to go to the Tampa show, but I don't have the money. So I'm going to do I'm going to go to the Pleasanton show instead in Northern California. So I'll be there. So anyway, sorry. I get all riled up when it comes to this stuff because it's just like I was talking to a buddy of mine last night. The email that I got from the California Air Resource Board that basically states that basically proves that the RV YouTubers, and I don't feel bad, you're fine. I was a finance manager, a sales manager, and ran RV dealerships for like the last 8 years, up until about 5 months ago. And, you know, I thought I was going to survive it, but I didn't. So I ended up basically donating the majority of my stuff. Turned on the Uber app full time and just focused in on the podcast, focused in on the main channel, just started doing little bits and pieces here. I went to go work for a used RV lot for a little bit, did a lot of their filming and marketing for them. I'm up in Northern California right now doing filming and helping a dealer with 3 locations. You know, filming inventory. It gives me the opportunity to stay and do more content, get other perspectives. But I haven't stopped being in the industry with people. So, you know, Jesse James, I basically gave away all my stuff, my Xboxes, all my video games, all my computers, probably half my clothes, my fishing equipment, I'm basically down to 2 backpacks and a suitcase is what I own. And I decided that it was more important for me to pay off my debt because I know that there's going to be opportunities in 2025 and 2026 to build a media company. And, you know, unfortunately, this industry, this RV industry, does not have a non-propaganda-based news source. It has rvtravel.com is the closest we have to a non-biased, or I should say unbiased, form of news for the RV industry, and they're really good. I actually do like them. I hope to eventually do some freelance work for them. But a lot of their news and a lot of the stuff they get comes from biased, propaganda-based news. Yeah. And basically, like, what's her name said, Lana Chamberlain said on here, she said that I'm on a walkabout. That was a great freaking comment. I loved reading that. That still sticks up here. I'm on a walkabout. I'm not living in a car. I'm not homeless. I'm on a walkabout. I love it. It's great. Northern California is expensive. You know, I don't believe anything the news says. Person with a brain. I don't believe anything the news says about Trump. I don't believe anything the news says about Biden. I don't believe anything the news says in general, because the mainstream media, their goal is to get attention because attention equals money. I've seen personally where, and I'll give you guys a great example. Let me give you a Democrat side of this, okay? Give you a great Democrat side of this. Joe Biden had been standing on his feet for like 9 hours straight without sitting down at his age. And he climbed up Air Force One and tripped and fell. And Fox News and every conservative news agency clipped him tripping over Air Force One and said, oh, you know, he's just not capable of being president. And, you know, his cognitive abilities, which we found out his cognitive is slowly going away. So did Ronald Reagan's. Okay. But not that he was on his feet for 8 or 9 hours at 80 something years old. And then on the conservative side, there was a day where Trump was in a news media, okay, And he kept telling the news agencies, and the news people in the room even agreed with him, that it was like 102, 103 degrees, and everybody in that room, including the news reporters, were sweating. And of course, MSNBC and CNN clipped that up to say, well, Donald Trump looks sick and he looks like he's not doing well. Look at all the sweating. So I don't believe anything that comes out of the mainstream media's mouth. It doesn't matter if it comes from Fox, CNN, MSNBC. I don't believe shit until I actually see every government agency, every military member, every FBI agent stay home and not do shit. I don't believe anything about a government shutdown. Oh, right now I spend about $50 a day between charging the car and food. But I also make money in doing Uber. Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I mean, I like Elon. I think Elon's weird. I think Elon's very weird. I think Jeff Bezos is weird. Hell, I even think Grant Cardone is weird. But you got to appreciate the success. You know, I think Mark Zuckerberg's a moron. He's intelligent, but when it comes to people, he's an idiot. But yet, he's still a billionaire. I think sometimes it takes a weird person to change the world. You know, I don't care what their politics are. You look at most of the billionaires that made it off of tech or some kind of app or some kind of innovation with a computer, they're weird. When has it ever shut down? It's never shut down. It's all propaganda. It's all to keep you in front of the TV so advertisers keep paying them money. If it was really going to shut down, we'd be screwed. I think probably if I can pay off 2 of my big credit cards, I can get out of the car. That's the goal. So if I could pay off about 18 grand of credit card debt, those are my 2 biggest cards, I can get out of the car and go into something else, because the other cards at that point, the other debts would be easy to pay off. One of them was negotiated down to 0% and they canceled the card. So I am weird. My goal is not to change anything. My goal is to inform people and educate people. But yeah, I'm very weird. Debt is not stupid. Debt is actually a very smart thing. The problem was I lost the income. Debt is actually a very good thing. So I told my buddy Steve, he lives in Vegas and he's in the industry, the RV industry. And I was telling him that, you know, for the first 12 years I was in this industry, right after Christmas, I used to go and pay off all my credit cards. No matter how much debt there was. There could be 25 grand, 30 grand. I used to carry 30, 40 grand in credit card debt every year to the end of the year, and then I'd pay it off. And the reason why I did that is because usually I'd take that 30 or 40 grand and I'd usually invest into something in stocks and bonds and stuff like that. That's why I had, you know, I would fluctuate between 100 and 180 grand in the bank, cash. Well, when you stop having an income for 2 years, 180 grand with all the inflation that goes around doesn't last long. And then you start using your credit cards to try to balance it out, because you're trying to balance, because it's going to recover. It's going to recover. It's going to recover. And 2.5 years later, it still hasn't recovered. So, you know, you just learn your lessons that you need multiple streams of income. I was dependent on one income, and I wasn't taking YouTube very seriously, and I wasn't taking TikTok very seriously. And I bet if I took it seriously 2 or 3 years ago, I probably wouldn't have had the problem I'm having now, because I'd probably be making enough ad revenue through YouTube, TikTok, and and probably Rumble and Facebook and Instagram to actually not worry about it. So I shower at the gyms. I have a membership at 24 Hour Fitness, and I work out 4 to 5 days a week, and shower at the gym. Money makes the world go round. I love God, but I know money makes the world go round. So I want to leave a legacy for my kids. Service will not pay the bills. It'll be the same as going into sales. Sales, I have a better opportunity to actually get out of debt faster, because if I sell 4 or 5 trailers a month, you know, plus the Uber, I can get out of debt probably in the next 7 months. About $2,300 now. I have about $2,300 in the bank right now, but I gotta keep that money in there because I rent the car for Uber. Nope, I sold all my real estate a long time ago. Glad I did too. Good question though. Okay. Oh, man. That's all I got. I got to get going. I got to start getting myself ready for Uber and Uber Eats. I got to stop by a place and introduce myself to some things. So, yeah, I'm starting all over, guys. I mean, I'm starting really from scratch. I mean, you know, I'm voluntary repossessing my old car because the engine blew. It's just been it's been a roller coaster ride the last 5 months. No, I figured out, I got a system now. And I also have the guys that I'm helping out. They've been nice enough to let me borrow a trailer every once in a while and sleep in there. But I got a great system. A great system. I'm not gonna tell you what it is because I don't want anybody knowing what it is. But I got a great system. So, well, anyway, guys, I'm going to get going. You have a good one. And remember, RV stands for toolkit and sense of humor. See you tomorrow.